The average Kiwi probably isn't as ready for retirement as they think they are. Now, a lot of us love to look at the average balances of KiwiSaver and think that that's probably going to be enough for us by the time we get to 65. But have we actually ever run the numbers? Now, recently I sat down with Jake from Generate and John Bell from Kauri Wealth to have a little bit of a retirement reality check and dig into some of the published data to figure out how much people suggest that we should aim to have by the time we get to 65, as well as the cost that we will face. In New Zealand, we're a little bit too flippant and we throw things around like my house is my retirement plan. But what does it actually mean? And how will we access the capital that is in that? That's why I believe that the likes of KiwiSaver or something that people are doing to save for their retirement is going to be so crucial so that we have a pot of cash outside of the equity that we're building up in our home to then lean on to use so that we can still have options when we get into retirement. We'll dig into some studies to see how much they suggest that it's going to cost us every single week when we get to the age of 65 and in retirement. Off of the back of this workshop, we've already had people get in touch and say that they've thought about increasing their contribution to KiwiSaver or understanding that they're not putting enough aside to have the retirement that they would like to have. So this could well be the retirement wake-up call for you. You're going to hear a number of people's questions towards the end as well that we do our best to answer. And a reminder that this is not specific financial advice for you. It's a general conversation around some of these things, as well as some of the headwinds that we have in terms of costs that are coming towards New Zealand. Like, will we all get the pension by the time some of the millennials get to 65? Controversial topic, but of course something that we probably have to face and be aware of, because it looks like we've got a continued and increasing amount of cost coming for all New Zealanders. Enjoy the workshop and would love to hear what you're doing to prepare for your retirement in the comments. Let us know. Let's kick into it because I'm sure people are excited to hear from you two gentlemen. So we're probably overdue to put together a bit of a retirement reality check, and looking forward to talking to Jake from Generate and John from Kauri Wealth. Both of these lads have been on the Keep the Change podcast before. So we're probably only just about missing Linus, but he's probably got some sort of modeling gig on tonight or something. But anyway, I'm sure Jake and John will answer all of your questions and give us a bit of a wake-up call. Two big things for me. I think that I still get the hunch that a lot of Kiwi people aren't taking retirement seriously enough, and we'll talk about that tonight. And I think individually we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can to ensure that we've got the comfort that we're going to be okay. But then also individually start to pass that education on as well. So hopefully tonight we're going to do a bit of that and encourage you to do that and run through some numbers, but also go through some of the changes that we've seen recently, and then give you guys a chance to have a number of your questions answered. So we'll touch on an intro for these boys in a second as well, but we're going to be looking at why KiwiSaver still matters, what the changes have been, and maybe we'll see some more changes as well, and what we need to be thinking about, how much it really costs to retire, and how much KiwiSaver do you need, what do we think about NZ Super. Three of us probably similarly aged. I think we might all have a very similar viewpoint to what could happen in that space. And then the value of getting financial advice and how accessible it now is for a lot of us. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I'll put on my disclaimer accent. The information in this webinar is for general information purposes only. It is not intended to be financial advice, but personalized advice based on your individual goals and circumstances. We recommend speaking with a professional advisor. Investing involves risk, and past performance is not guarantee of future results. If you would like to see Generate's product disclosure, visit generatekiwisaver.co.nz/PDS. The issuer is Generate Investment Management Limited. Never done that before. Righto. So hopefully you know who I am, or maybe you've come through the Generate avenue. If you don't, I'm Luke, the host of the Keep the Change podcast, and I'll give the lads 30 seconds to introduce themselves. Otherwise, I'll throw them under the bus and make up my own intro. But John, do you want to go first, and then we'll go to Jake?
Perfect. I think I'd rather speak about myself before you go and throw a few comments about me out there. So, hey everybody, look, my name's John Bell. I run a business called Kauri Wealth. I'm probably one of the most passionate people that when it comes to the topic around KiwiSaver, and luckily I've got another two super passionate people on this webinar with me today. So, look, biggest thing from my side is I come from a real small town at the very top of New Zealand called Kaitaia. Where I come from, I quickly realized that the words money, the words retirement, the words KiwiSaver were never anything in my day-to-day conversation. And so I set up my business to help everyday New Zealanders, just like yourselves, make sure they get the absolute best out of their KiwiSaver. And that's why I feel very fortunate to be here sharing a little bit of knowledge with you all today. So looking forward to sharing some stories and a few stats along the way.
A very proud Northland man, and I believe he's just sponsored one of the rugby players' jerseys.
Yes, that's probably one of the biggest dreams of mine. Was never good enough to crack it as a rugby player. So if you can make it, you got to pay to put your name on the back of the jersey. Is the way I look at it.
Well done, mate. Good on you. And Jake?
Yeah, so from the Bay of Plenty myself, again, very passionate about this space as well. Been working with Generate now for nearly 4 years, but bounced around a lot of different jobs through my sort of early career and just found that there was a lot of information points being missed along the way, particularly around financial literacy. So something like Keep the Change has always been close to my heart because it very much is about educating and empowering New Zealanders. So really privileged and honoured to be here today sharing with you boys, and obviously looking forward to diving into some of the most important planning we can do for our future around our financial learning. So here we go.
Good man. And these two lads are, as well as other advisors, they are going into organizations and talking to individuals and talking to their children and all sorts all over the country. So if you do want to have them come and speak to you or your organization, reach out to them. I'm sure they would love to help if they do have the capacity. Let's get straight into it. So some changes for the first time. We've seen some changes in the KiwiSaver space that will impact every single Kiwi. Now, Jake, do you want to take us through what these changes are? We might have a quick chat about those.
Yeah, absolutely, Luke. Cheers for that. So obviously the government have made a couple of big announcements around the changes in the KiwiSaver space, and obviously they can impact you no matter what stage of the journey you're on. So as of April next year, the minimum employee contribution rate will increase to 3.5%, and as of April 2028, that'll be jumping to 4%. Now, to put that in context, someone who is earning $75,000 a year, if you're doing the minimum contribution, this is going to increase what you're putting in yourself by $750 a year. So for a lot of people, they saw the government contribution being halved from the $520 roughly that it was down to the $260. Now that it's been halved, a lot of people are kind of going, well, that's not fair. But the reality is you are going to see greater net growth because you're going to be putting in more. So it's about finding that balance. Now, of course, there are a few other elements to this as well. People earning 180,000 or more are no longer eligible for government contributions, and 16 and 17-year-olds are now welcome to the party. You can now get the government contributions as well. So lots to unpack there, but it's exciting that we are increasing that contribution rate so that we can all start to just be putting more away for the future.
Yeah, cool to see that it's getting earlier and earlier for people to start thinking about this, and that then obviously gives us the benefit of compounding. A bit tough for those self-employed maybe who still don't have really too much incentive to contribute. I do wonder if that will be the next thing that gets addressed. But I also saw one of the ministers talking about how maybe an 8% contribution rate may not be the end of this, and we might see governments in the future continue to increase this. So this might just be the first step of more gradual increases.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the scary part here is that if you compare us to a lot of other countries around the world, 3% is pretty minor in the sense of we are planning for these long-term goals. So it is great that we're seeing these changes. I do anticipate there will be more, whether it be the contribution rate or other elements. It's an evolving conversation, and that's just like the aging population of New Zealand. Things are changing, circumstances are changing. So it's important that the policy matches that so that we can all stay ahead of it and hopefully plan for a better tomorrow.
John, have you had many people getting in touch with you, read these changes with your client base?
Yeah, for sure. I was just going to say it's two-sided. Like everybody gets their head in the sand straight away and goes, "Oh no, we're getting less from the government." So I'm glad Jake touched on that really well. I actually used that a really cool calculator in the background before ChatGPT. It said literally if you're earning $29,010 a year, then your break even is better off. So what that means is the 1% extra you and your employer is going to put in over the period of the year is worth more than the $260 you get less in the government. So anybody listening to this right now, these changes actually are a really, really good thing for you. If you're earning more than $29,000 a year, you're going to be seeing more in your KiwiSaver. You'll be able to see it grow faster. The other thing I'd really like to talk on the positive about these changes is the big one where it's opening up government contribution from 16 to 17 again, because when you started opening this topic there, Luke, you said, some of the biggest changes we've seen. They are the biggest changes we've seen. They're not the only changes that we have seen though. And And that's what people forget. There used to be that $1,000 Kickstarter as well. And so our generation really got KiwiSaver set up by their mums and dads without even knowing what it is. It might be part of the reason we're here talking about KiwiSaver today, saying, hey, we've got it. We don't know why we have it. And that's because a lot of our parents just signed us all up to it when it started. And so the cool thing about this is I've noticed a lot of my parents say that I speak with are saying, I don't want to put any extra into my KiwiSaver until they get the government contribution. So the sooner we can get people starting their KiwiSaver and get those compounding effects rolling, the better. So it's a really big change that I've noticed.
Well, I believe that Generate have recently put together some of the averages across different age brackets, and we're going to have a look at those a little bit later in the webinar as well. A reminder that we're going to talk for probably 45 and then get into some Q&A. Please put your questions in there. I can see them flooding in already. I'm scared to click on it. I don't want to see what's in there. We've got a fair bit to get through, so we'll keep tracking so that we don't get distracted, and we'll look at those results to that poll as well. But next up is how much will retirement cost? John, do you want to take us through this and where this info comes from and what we need to be thinking about?
Perfect. All right, yeah, for sure. I'm glad you alluded to that because the info we're going to look at is what a study says retirement is going to cost. But as we all know, it's all different for each and every single one of us. But this here is a really, really good guideline because what it actually does is it measures patterns of retired New Zealanders and how they're budgeting and spending in New Zealand as well. So this is conducted by Massey University. It's a retirement expenditure study done in 2024. And so what it's really saying is, hey, we've taken the data from two separate locations, something called metro and something called provincial, which you'll see on the left-hand side. Metro is your big areas, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch. Provincial is the rest of New Zealand. And it's saying, how are our retirees in New Zealand spending their money in these two separate locations? And how far is it actually going? And with two different styles of lifestyle. One of that is called no frills. So it's just a basic, modest, standard retirement. You're getting by, you're getting your fruit and veg, you're getting your groceries, and you're able to do a few things. And then we have something called a choices lifestyle, which is a more comfortable, a little bit more indulgent, and doing a few more of the things that, in all honesty, I believe if we've worked our ass off for as many years as we have, we just all deserve to be in a little bit of a choices lifestyle. But not everybody gets there, and we're going to talk about that in 2 seconds. So right now, the really interesting thing I always look at is people would say in a no frills lifestyle, everybody always thinks, oh, provincial would be cheaper. Actually, when we look at it on a no frills lifestyle, it's cheaper to live in our metro areas than it is our provincial areas because everything is around us. So we're not having to drive all the way here to get the basic necessities for life and all those different kinds of things. So at $900 a week, $909 a week in the metro, and over $1,000 a week is what our retirees in New Zealand, and these are households, so one person or two person households, this is what they're having to spend per week just to get by on a no frills lifestyle. For those that want to do a little bit more and have the lifestyle that I think we all deserve eventually, and that's probably why I'm so passionate to be here talking about KiwiSaver, because the more we can focus on our KiwiSaver now, the more people we can get from a no frills lifestyle over to that choices lifestyle. And you can see it's a really, really big difference there. We're talking $800 difference in the metro areas and a $200 difference in the provincial areas. But the thing I really want to highlight with when we talk about this is how does that line up again with all those conversations that Jake just said around the changes in KiwiSaver? Like at the end of the day, as the amount we put into our KiwiSaver grows, is it going to get up to the number to be able to give us the lifestyle we want? And the question you've probably got in the back of your head is, oh, well, I've got super to rely on. Do any of us know out there in the chat, like how much we get from super? I'm sure we're going to jump into it in 2 seconds. But like, is that kind of how you look at it when you look at this as well, Luke? You go, hey, these are the numbers, the no frills and the choices lifestyle, but how super, where does super, what's the bridge between, are we earning more with super, are we earning less with super? Where's the bridge? Is that kind of how you look at this?
Yeah, the two big themes that I see people talk about where I then get worried that they don't actually think about retirement is one, they say something about, oh, it's all good, I'll just downsize when I retire. And you're like, what does that even mean? And, I think it's just one of those simple, generalized things that Kiwi people have been great at talking about to give people confidence that they've got their retirement sorted. And then the second piece is that, oh, it's all good, I'll get superannuation. And you say, well, how much is that? Or don't know. And or maybe being an accountant, that's what we do. We're running numbers all the time. We're looking at things to try and figure out what's it going to cost to hire somebody? What's this lease going to cost? Will a lease mean then we're going to need insurance? And so it's very natural for us to go down that path. And I think we haven't taught Kiwi people to do that. And the other piece of that as well is that for younger people, I think you just need to be mindful that if your parents and older people haven't understood KiwiSaver, I see them talking about KiwiSaver as, oh, you guys will be sweet. You've got KiwiSaver. And the same thing, it's like, yeah, but have you then run the numbers of whether that's going to be enough and how much that's going to be at 65 and how long that will last? No, for a lot of people, like we haven't done that. And so we kind of make it sound so simple, which is great, but then don't go, hey, but actually now we need to run the numbers. And then just on these numbers, I think from memory, you boys will know more than I, but these are based on being mortgage free as well, right? So this is what you would be spending without having to pay anything towards housing or accommodation.
Little
The
percentage
assumption.
of
Oh,
it's
sorry, you
housing
go,
and
John.
utilities.
Yeah, my understanding from the study is that it is a debt-free environment and per couple. So it is something to very much consider, that there are obviously a lot of elements in it. And it's really interesting, Luke, that you bring up the sort of previous generation telling the younger people now, you guys will be all right because you've got KiwiSaver. But there's a lot of misinformation out there. And you look to previous governments who have brought in super schemes and then got rid of them. And if you look back to even the 1997 retirement compulsory savings scheme, there was 91.8% of the voters who said, no, we don't want that. So that's just something that within, 30 years later, we're looking at such a different landscape that we're realizing how valuable this is. And we missed out on 10 years of it by that, I guess, lack of information and awareness around. But by such a landslide, it's still such a scary number.
And
Well,
it hurts me as well. I'm sure you get it as well, Jake, when Luke alluded to earlier, like we get the fortunate, we get to go into businesses and talk about KiwiSaver and all this. I bet you get this every time because I get this every single time. I go in there, I'll do my presentation, and everybody will be hot and bothered about KiwiSaver. They'll be writing their name down to have a catch up and seek some individual advice with me. And it gets to the people probably 55 and above, and they go, oh, it's too late for me, but here's the young fellas. Hey, young fellas, make sure you get this done. But I always get that it's too late for me. And I'm like, it's just not. That is such an important conversation, is that they think KiwiSaver is just going to solve problems for others, and it's too late for them. KiwiSaver is going to solve problems for others if they do it right. But done right, we can make a really big difference with those last 5, 10, 15 years as well for others. So important.
Nice. Do you guys, just very quickly, do you guys often see that people's perception is you get to 65, you turn your KiwiSaver off, you go complete risk off, you take it all out and you get your pile of cash and you hold on to it and go, oh, I've done it. And there's no thinking, hey, you might
You're
live for
triggering
another.
me right now. You're triggering me
Sorry.
right now. It's a daily conversation for me, and it is the one thing I'm probably the most passionate about is, hey, and it's this whole conversation we're having today. Hey, how is KiwiSaver going to get you through retirement, not just start your retirement off? Because at the end of the day, if we bring it back to the exact slide we got on here, the numbers for super are as a single, and we'll see it in the next slide. But right now, if we're looking at the screen we got here, the minimum numbers, no frills, is 909. Provincial is 1,031. Super as a single is, let's call it $520. As a couple, it's $799 a week. So in both scenarios, whether it's a household of one or two, and whether it's in metro or provincial, there's a gap between super and what real retirees in New Zealand are spending right now. And if you just pull all that KiwiSaver out at the age of 65 and you have no growth on that, or you just spend it all and pay off a few big things you've got there, or go and have a really good lifestyle for 1 or 2 years, then you've got a gap that you're not going to be able to fill for years to come.
All right, well, we're going to get into some rules of thumb very soon. Jake's going to take us through them of what we could be thinking about in terms of how much we might need at different age stages of our life. But before we do, John, just quickly, we were talking about what is New Zealand Super. Here are some examples of what the amounts are. I don't qualify yet. I feel like I'm inching closer every day and probably looking more like it as well. But maybe you just want to take us through these. And obviously, these change each year, right?
They do change. They do change. But at the end of the day, I guess the biggest thing I'll start off with is, guys, if we look at this, NZ Super alone isn't enough. Based on the two PowerPoints, we've just gone from one to the other. But what I'll do is I'll take 2 steps back, and I apologize for any of our listeners that really know what NZ Super is. But I think it's pretty important just before I jump in to let people know exactly what it is, because I get asked all the time, oh, super, KiwiSaver, same thing, right? It's not, right? So NZ Super is a government pension. It's paid out fortnightly. It's what we've paid tax through our whole working life, and we're entitled to super once we get there. It's what the government uses to help our retirees get by. At the end of the day, though, the biggest thing I'll start off with is 25 cents of every single dollar that New Zealanders pay in tax goes to paying NZ Super. And unfortunately, that's not something we can live with moving forward. Right now, NZ Super is not income tested, it's not asset tested. So in many countries it is. And what the reason I'm kind of highlighting these few things is because these are the numbers right now. But I'm pretty sure if I hand the floor over to Jake and Luke, you'd probably agree we see a few changes with these by the time we are able to get that gold card at 65. Fair?
Yeah, who knows in the sense that of what those changes will look like, but I think it's fair to assume that we can't rely on it, and what we should be doing is planning for if it's there, fantastic, that can be considered a bonus. But it's so important that now you've got time on your side, you're still working potentially, that's the time to maximize your own what you can control, and what you can't control is just noise in the background. So it's definitely something to consider, but I look at it and say it's just consider it a bonus. And utilize what you do know with your KiwiSaver, with your input, how much you can maximize in that space there. So it's really just down to what you want out of it. But it is such an unknown thing. And as you say, John, it is such a huge burden on the taxpayer. And obviously with an aging population and less people contributing to those tax payments, it's just an equation that doesn't have a happy ending.
Yeah, I guess my take would be very similar to you lads. We are cautiously, it's one of those things where I wouldn't be surprised to see it change in our lifetime. I wouldn't be surprised to face another form of means testing at the level of income and assets that I plan to be at. I think, yeah, that this super doesn't come massively into my own retirement planning because I can just see the number of workers per retiree and planning accordingly. Now, that's easy for me to say, let's say, compared to, say, other people might be thinking. But I don't want you to then lose hope for yourself. But I think you don't want a change to come in this space and go, oh my, like, how can they do that and be, angry? And the sooner we can prepare for some of the potential changes that we will see in our lives, like means testing, like super changes, like a capital gains tax, etc., we can probably come to terms with it and make decisions about what we do going forward. But by no means do we know exactly what will happen, but it would not surprise me to see it changing. And I do think as well, you can't make big changes to it when such a big part of the voting base is benefiting from it. And I like looking at consumer behavior, right? So two things that I hear. Well, I hear baby boomers saying, you can't change that. That we've paid taxes our whole life for that. Whereas you hear millennials and younger people saying, that doesn't seem very sustainable, eh? I don't expect super to be there when I'm there. You don't hear baby boomers say that. They're like, oh yes, but like every now and then they'll have a nuanced convo about it, but they normally default to, you can't change that. No. Whereas younger people, I think, are already accepting, something might change in this space, but we'll watch that one play out. Right. How much should you aim to save? And I guess here as well, with everything we're talking about, it's all grain of salt, right? This is going to sound bad, but we're all going to die someday and we don't know when. But what a beautiful thing to leave your KiwiSaver to support your family. And, at whatever age that happens, so I know that can sound a bit morbid, but it's a great asset that you are building along the way too, and it could set up your nephew, your niece, your children. You just don't know. So I think equally, like, give investing strong reasons for you. But it's very hard for a lot of us to figure out what is something going to cost because we all live very different lifestyles, right? So some of us might want to travel twice a year. Some of us might be content to, have a coconut latte once a week, and that's our big thing that we do for the week and be just as happy. So each to their own. But Jake, do you want to talk us through sort of these, general rules here?
Yeah, and look, there are an infinite number of rules to live by and things you should aim for, but this one's done by Fidelity, and it's just looking at different milestones you should aim to hit. And you brought something up really interesting there, Luke, around what happens to KiwiSaver if you do pass away, and it is an asset that is passed on to your next of kin or family or wherever you nominate through your will, and that's something to be really keep in mind when you're saving for this. You're saving for your future. You're paying it forward to yourself, or worst case scenario, those that you love. And I think that's a really nice sentiment to kind of keep in mind with KiwiSaver. Now, the idea of the Fidelity study here is kind of different milestones to hit by certain ages to be on track for a very comfortable retirement. Now, again, we've already highlighted there are so many factors when looking at what your retirement might look like in comparison to others. But just looking at here, if you've saved 1 times your income by the age of 30 and invested, 2 by 35, and then continue. Now, if you're earning, say, 65, 75,000 a year, if by age 67 you have 650 or $750,000 tucked away, that's a substantial sum of cash that you can be investing, utilizing, and obviously chatting to people around how you want that to fund your lifestyle. And it's something that the other lads have touched on already, but the way in which you access your KiwiSaver post 65 has a big impact. New Zealanders are a very talented bunch at spending money. There's no denying that, and that's to do with the cost of living and everything going on around us. So if everyone took all of their money out at age 65, what we'd see is a lot of people age 67 driving their nice cars to their job because they can't afford to stop working. And so that's what we want to really highlight is accessing your KiwiSaver in the right way and drawing it down in a way to maximize your enjoyment in your lifestyle is really comes down to planning, and it's really in your hands. So all these things to consider, but this is a nice rule of thumb that I'm sure Luke can make available for people just to kind of reflect on. Where are you on this scale? And of course, how are you on track for that comfortable lifestyle on your terms?
I think the thing to remember here too is that it can be incredibly disheartening to look at things like this that seem so simple and go, well, I'm nowhere near that, or get into some of these averages that we will touch on soon. And two things, like this can sound a bit brutal, but if you're not an average person, like don't aim for averages. You know, I was taught that from like in my 20s, and it really stuck with me. I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. And we can sometimes compare ourselves to average and go, oh, but that shouldn't then just pull us down. We should be going, okay, well, what's that telling me? What else could I be doing? Or but then again, that's not very Kiwi to talk like that. But also remembering too that we go through seasons in our life. So, you know, I've had a season in my life where I wasn't even contributing to KiwiSaver, and I thought it would be a dream to be able to do that. And I just wanted to get out of my credit card debt. And as soon as I did that, I'd be contributing again. But no, it just led to the next reason not to contribute. And, you know, I lost a lot of that time to compound. So then in the season where I'm like, okay, Luke, you know the thing to do, like catch up, you know, play catch up. And when we look at averages or sort of simplified rules, we can go, no, I'm going to tune out now because there's no way I've got 3 times mine at the age of 40 or whatever. Therefore, like I'm out of here and I'm off back onto TikTok or whatever. You know, you can achieve a lot in a life in 5 years when you're really disciplined and when you go, right, you know what, I've got a bit of catching up to do, and we can go through those seasons as well. So don't be disheartened by averages and by rules of thumb. We're going to touch on the value of expert advice, and you know I've seen the difference between some of the averages that Generate users have in their KiwiSaver funds compared to the industry average, if we want to call it that. And it's pretty phenomenal to see how much advice can actually impact some of the numbers and the output. So, Jake, do you want to take us through these, or is this something for you, John?
Happy either way. Like, I guess I'll hand the floor to Jake, but I guess the way I always look at like the real value of expert advice is analogy I use with a lot of my clients is like it's like turning up to a new town and we are Google Maps. If you don't use Google Maps, there's a chance you're going to get to the same endpoint that I'm going to get you to, but you're probably going to take a few wrong turns or arrive there late. My goal is to be Google Maps for you and say, guide you at each and every single corner to help you get to and in this case, the retirement or the first home number that you want as soon as possible. That's the most important thing. Like that's me giving an analogy to why I think it's important, but I'm sure if I hand it over to Jake right now, he can give you something with a lot more stats and a lot better than that.
I really like that analogy, actually, John, because you're exactly right. We are all aiming for the end goal. 65, accessing this wonderful thing that we've been contributing towards along the way, but we want it to be as effective as possible for us. Now, the measurement of effectiveness in the space of KiwiSaver is obviously the value of it to us and how we can then utilize it post 65. The value of advice in any subject is measured differently, but it's so important. And this is something I've always lived firmly by, is you can't be an expert in everything. So it pays to know an expert in everything. And that's where I firmly believe if you are seeking advice on any subject, it's so important to make sure that it's appropriate. And this report, the Breaking Through the Advice Barrier report, really highlights that value. And I get money for a lot of people is a very nervous subject. People get shy talking about it. People get embarrassed when they're not aware of what's going on around them. But I think the lack of our willingness to talk about it really shields us from opportunity. And when you start talking to those around you about what you know and what you don't know, that's where learning happens. And as Luke once said, learning leads to earning. So I'm a firm believer in utilizing advice around you in any subject. But of course, what we specialize in is this wonderful tool called KiwiSaver.
Nice. And that was part of the reason that I partnered with Generate, is to give listeners who are asking me questions about this access to an advisor so they could speak to and get the right advice. And I think, Jake, it might have been you explaining, and maybe even both of you, about, people bringing their kids along to these meetings to talk about KiwiSaver so that they are introducing their kids and normalizing these conversations that, you do this, and they start picking it up earlier. And I think, where it's going to be fascinating. You think the education that people have received about investing because of KiwiSaver, and then the, different managed funds and things outside of it that you can invest into as well, that we now have that access. And to think in, say, 40 years, what the education level is going to be like of the kids coming through and what they're going to be doing is going to be phenomenal to watch. And I truly don't think we can really get our head around the size of that and maybe the impact that that's going to have on the entire country.
I agree, and it's not just money either. Like sometimes we get so, we're just helping people get more money. That is going to be a factor, but the thing that having the confidence, it's about knowing the value versus just acting on it, is it actually comes with security, confidence, and stress relief. Like there's a stat, if you've had financial advice once in your life, you feel 2 times more optimistic about the future. And so like a lot of people are like, oh, everything you do is just about helping people make money. What we do is about helping people make plans and therefore be able to plan with confidence, and it takes off the stresses in the everyday life. Like I love it. It's so important. It makes such a big difference to people, and it's always free, right? So why not put one step forward and make sure you're putting yourself in the best position, like I said, to be able to get to that end point as fast and as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, I don't think any of us could tell that you were passionate about this, mate. But I think that's why Massey call it, choices, because they're giving us choices, right, that we can then have. And that's often what I'm talking to clients in the business space about, of it's all good to stack some money aside to give yourself options. You might end up hiring, you might end up buying a piece of equipment or whatnot, but because you've got it there, you can do it and you've got those options. And I think we live in a world now where it's basically like save for something, and then go and buy it and then start again, whether it's a home, whether it's a car, whether it's, something fancy, a holiday. And not enough of us know about stacking money to then go, okay, that's going to give me options. That's going to give me choice. And maybe I will go watch the Northland game. Maybe I'd rather watch Taranaki or the Turbos, or whatever, or like, no, I can't. But because you do have the money in retirement, in this example, like you then have options of what you can do with it.
Correct. And like on both sides, like means more at retirement, more travel, more hobbies, but it also means supporting family as well. And that's a big thing I've seen with people in my community at retirement is, man, life doesn't always go fair for everybody. I want to make sure that as many people as I know and that work with me at Kauri Wealth or with Generate have the ability that if things don't go right in their life, they can support those around them. But that's not going to come if you don't make the right decisions as well. So choices is on the good and the bad, but giving you flexibility at the end of the day, right?
And before we get into these differences that Jake is out there grinding himself to ensure that we can have these differences between the average and then the generate average. I think, if we think down the path with KiwiSaver 2, two great stories. One, I tell this all the time, but Stan, who come on the podcast, he was talking about how he's shooting for the stars with his business because he knows that even if he fails, he's got his retirement sorted, because that money is just going to compound through to a nice large sum. And by 65, he's going to be minted. So in his mind, he's like, why wouldn't I take heaps of risk in my life? It doesn't make any sense not to. He's like, I've already got that base ticked. So then that's giving him options in the here and now. And then secondly, I've been, speaking to the odd person who is getting, to that age where they can access their KiwiSaver, and they're like, oh, I don't need my life insurance anymore. Don't need to pay for that because we've got this sitting here. So again, it gives me an option. Do I actually need to pay for that? Now that's not, general, that's not advice to them, go and cancel your insurance. But again, you then start to get to think about some of these things, because you're investing and saving and building up a war chest that you then do have options. Jake, before we get too passionate about that, mate, take us through some of these differences that you guys are seeing out there via the different age ranges.
Yeah, absolutely, Luke. And just to cover off that point as well around spending and stimulating the economy, there's been so many other countries around the world that have proven that when you do have people who are comfortable with where they're at with their retirement planning, there is more spending going on in their 50s and 60s. So a great example of this is, again, we're comparing ourselves across the ditch, and comparison is the thief of joy. But just as an example, you've got New Zealand's KiwiSaver fund is a third of the value of our GDP, whereas in Australia, their super fund is twice the value of their GDP. So you're looking at a huge difference here in the way in which people can retire, and it comes down to planning, and obviously it's been around a lot longer than KiwiSaver. Now, these balances here are as at a few months ago. So this is to do with March 2025. So just so you're aware, these have moved a little bit. If anyone's been following the markets, you'll know there've been a few changes this year. I won't point too much at Donald Trump, but there have been a few bits and bobs. But of course, there's also been a lot of opportunity and growth going on. And that's where we do see members who are making more active decisions really accelerating here. Now, a huge driver of why generates members, you'll see in every single age range here, are doing better than the national average, is because by and large, Generate members are made up of people who have made an active choice, not only with the provider that's managing them, but in how their money is being managed. Now, just to give you an idea of that, in New Zealand, about 46% of people sit in growth and aggressive category funds, whereas at Generate, we have over 80% of our members in those funds, because people are being informed of what risk actually means and how does that apply to people's individual circumstances. So it's about understanding what power you have, what timeline you have, and of course, your appetite for investment risk. And then we can build a plan that's more tailored to you and your journey. So obviously, you've got young people getting into KiwiSaver, first jobs, potentially lower incomes at that age range of 18 to 25. You'll see even at this level, we've got a higher balance, even though this is when most people kind of enter the KiwiSaver world. And a lot of this can also come down to parents understanding the value to themselves and setting up their kids before they turn 18. Now, that's obviously something that's at your discretion if it's something you want to explore about setting KiwiSaver up for your children. But you can see here the power that does is give them a head start. Now, if you've got young children at the moment, I don't know what the housing market's going to do in 20 years, but I don't imagine it's going to be a lot easier. So we look at that and go, well, how can we plan for that now? And things like this are a great way to kind of start those conversations. So instead of me reading every single list, hopefully you've got a good idea there of your age range, where you sit. And if it's something that you obviously want to make sure you're maximizing, there's always places like myself and John and the whole Generate team that we can give you this advice and support to make sure you're getting the most out of your KiwiSaver journey.
John, at a high level, do you just want to explain like what the role of a KiwiSaver advisor is? Like, is it as simple as basically, righto, let's make sure you're taking the right amount of risk and you're in the fund that fits well with your values and whatnot, or is, how would you explain it?
That's a big part of it. But if I was to just straight up be like, hey, what does a KiwiSaver advisor do? The honest thing I would say I do is I actually, for the first time in your life, hand the platform back to you and say, hey, what is your situation? What are your goals? And how are we going to get there? Because I think without an advisor in your life, nobody actually takes the time to have that conversation with themselves. They just sign up to this thing called KiwiSaver. Their employer puts some in, they put some in, and they're with a random provider out there or somebody they might have done some research on a few years ago, and things have changed and they haven't changed it. So what I'm doing and what Jake's doing and what really good advisors are doing is taking that time every single year to check in with their clients and say, hey, what is your situation? How do we make sure your KiwiSaver is designed for you as an individual, not just the law of averages and going with the flow? And so the biggest things we're looking at are, well, literally what you've put on the board, really. The first thing is always going to be your fund type. So making sure that you've got the right level of risk for your timeframes, whether that be buying homes or going towards retirement. And as you get closer to retirement, the conversation with an advisor and a client is not, hey, let's try and make you as much as possible. It's about saying what level of risk can we afford to give you the right amount you need at retirement and be able to have you live on that forever moving forward. So for me, if I had to sum up what is advisor, it's somebody that's working with you as an individual to tailor your KiwiSaver to you moving forward. It's that simple at the end of the day.
Nice. And I think, it's a good reminder again, as I touched on earlier, we are sometimes our parents, as amazing as they can be, may not have the education and might go, oh no, that's a waste of time, that KiwiSaver. And then that could put you back sometime. Go and have a conversation with somebody who gets it. But equally as well, I've been telling this story recently where I heard somebody talking about their kids' retirement and KiwiSaver, and they're like, oh, you'll be sweet, you've got KiwiSaver. My kids, they're going to have millions in there. And then they had this subtle pause and they were like, I think. And I thought, wow, like you don't actually know. But that's, I think, sums up the Kiwi sort of way, right? Of like, oh, they'll be all good. She'll be right, mate. They've got KiwiSaver. Well, again, like what are the numbers for that? And, individually, people can then lean on advisors like yourselves to help run those numbers. And I know, for me, when I started running some numbers on the sorted retirement calculator, I thought I was going to have way more in there than what the numbers were telling me. I'm refreshing it, going, oh man, I might unadjust this and get rid of that inflation toggle. I want the number to be bigger. But for the number to be bigger, Luke had to start, putting in a bit more, and accepting that, I did miss a big window of compounding. Right, we've probably talked enough, and I can see there's already 20 questions stacked up, so we might start getting to those. But we do have, obviously the advice can be blunt from us three lads at times. So we've got a couple of blunt umbrellas from Generate to give away. So two lucky attendees are going to receive those. I think we'll pick one person who has the best question, and Jake can judge that. And maybe then the second best question, and John can judge that. I was going to say maybe just somebody who is registered, but let's keep it for those who are asking a question. So there's an incentive to ask a question. Jake, do you want to own those questions? Can you see them from your side there, mate?
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to run these and ask them of the team. Now, obviously, we have answered a significant number of these questions. So if we do miss yours, we've either answered it or we'll come back to it. But we've sort of had ones along the lines of what are your views around the recent government decisions for reductions and things like that. So thank you very much for your questions. We've answered those ones through. But here's an interesting one. And this is one I often say to people. It's a really important conversation to have with an accountant. So lucky we've got one in the room. Someone who has a big lump sum of money potentially sitting in Aussie in a super scheme over there. Thoughts on moving that to New Zealand before they turn 60? What are your thoughts on that, both John and Luke? But we'll start with yourself, Luke.
Well, geez, this is ugly because I actually don't know a lot about this. I stay away from pension transfers. It's a very specialized area of tax and can get very complicated. So yeah, you're probably best to speak to an accountant just to make sure that you're not missing anything. But I'm sure John would have some thoughts on the general side of bringing funds over. You wouldn't be the first person to do it.
For sure. And so like Luke said, there are a few, most between New Zealand and Aussie, it is actually pretty simple on the tax front, which is really good. But there are a few little intricacies that always need to be discussed. But on the conversation of do I bring it back or do I not, it comes back to what are you doing with it? If you really know exactly why you have it in that with that provider in the fund type and everything like that in Australia, then cool, you're better off than most of the people I talk to every single day. The honest truth, though, is if you're asking, hey, should I bring it back? It's probably because you're going, I don't really know exactly what's going on with it over here. When you bring it back, you're going to be able to then lump it all in with your KiwiSaver, have more to benefit from all those compounding returns. But as I saw in that client, 59 years of age, you're going to be able to start putting the right level of risk to all of your assets, not just the part you're controlling back here in New Zealand. And so it's really about giving that flexibility and really making it individual for you again. So for me, if my clients are saying, John, I want to bring it back, I don't plan on going back over to Aussie, I'm going, hey, let's make that possible. And like, this one's hosted by Generate. Generate makes that very, very simple and easy for you. Anything you'd add on there, Jake?
That's a good summary of it, mate. Absolutely support that space. And just to sort of follow on with another question around, do government contributions continue after 65? I just sort of I can answer that one and say, unfortunately, they don't. That is a period where they stop. But the idea of that is then the pension kicks in. So that's always what I remind people, is there is another form of government support which does pay more than $260 per year. So it's a win in that respect. There's actually quite a few comments in here that I can redirect to you, gentlemen, around the what if you're a sole trader, or I'm feeling a bit ripped off because I am self-employed. Do one of you, John, maybe, do you want to reference that and just talk to that, please?
Yeah, I'd love to, because in all honesty, you are talking to a sole trader over here as well, team. So the advice I'm giving you is straight from the heart. I know it can be hard. One, we've never really been super incentivized to put too much into our KiwiSaver as sole traders, based purely on no employer contribution, obviously, but also just $520 a year. Now that's $260. People going, I'm less incentivized. I always want to look at it like this, though. The numbers I always talk to people when I'm talking about to sole traders is, look at time frames, right? If you put $1,000, if you started off with $1,000 in your KiwiSaver, and you put in just 1,300 dollars a year, 1,312, that's effectively you putting in your 1,042, the government putting in their 260. After 10 years, it's 20,000. After 20 years, it's 58,000. After 30 years, it's 138,000. After 40 years, it's 293,000. Over 50 years, it's 589,000. 60 years, it's 1.16 million. So even just doing the bare minimum as a sole trader, I know we're talking about a long period of time, but that's investing in general. That's KiwiSaver in general, right? I'm trying to get across, what would you have done with that money instead? Would you just leave it in your bank account earning 2% a year? Let's actually say, hey, yes, it's only $260 we get from the government. We're only putting in $1,042. What is the opportunity cost of that money? And for me, that's why I'm always like, hey, as sole traders, at a minimum, do the bare minimum every single time of the week, because of those numbers I just talked about, but also just use it as that compulsory saving mechanism as well. The way I treat it as a sole trader is I go, hey, if I was in a salary job earning what I'm earning right now, I used to use 3%, but I'll be taking it to 4% and saying, what is 4%? I need to put that in every single time. And the more you earn, I would say, oh, well, I'm missing on the employer benefit as well. Chuck a little bit more as well, because the numbers are so undeniable. And the way I always look at it is opportunity cost, right? What would I be doing with that money if I wasn't putting it into my KiwiSaver as well?
Nice. So just to add as well, a lot of SME business owners in New Zealand are a little bit delusional with the old, oh, my business is my retirement plan, but then haven't actually had a conversation about what's it valued at, how can we improve the value of that, when are you actually going to retire, what's your identity, what will you do if you sell it, etc., etc. So again, like another one of those classic Kiwi slogans of, oh no, my house is my retirement plan. What does that mean? Not sure, hadn't really thought about that. Oh, my business is my retirement plan. Okay, how? So yeah, and also I'm confident that you've got large advocates now for sole traders like Henry, 400,000 people working in that sole sole trader slash contractor space. You get Henry that start representing 100,000 of them. They're saying to the government, hey, this isn't good enough. What are you doing? You can't just ignore 400,000 people. We're representing 100,000 of them, and I know they feel pretty strongly about it. So I wouldn't be surprised if the way the economy works and people work now has really changed. So I would be confident over the next 5 or 10 years we'll see something change in that space. I hope so anyway.
Awesome. And just to kind of let everyone know, we are not going to get through all of these questions unless anyone wants to do an all-nighter. And the time that we are answering one, we are getting many more. So appreciate that, guys. One I will just reference here is asking if the advice is free from an advisor. Now, obviously, there are a lot of different platforms to seek advice in New Zealand around financial. In the space of KiwiSaver advice on behalf of Generate, myself, and John, this is an obligation-free session. This is a chance to look at what you're doing without any obligations, without any pressure. It's just a way to make sure that you're on the right track, because it's your money at the end of the day and you're working hard for it. So you deserve to have your money working hard for you as well. So I always think that's something that people should have access to in our economy. Now, one really good question here that might be up there for one of the front runners, and I'll leave this to you guys to answer, but how would you determine the quality of a KiwiSaver fund other than just the yearly return? Are there any other factors that we should be considering?
Perfect. Happy for me to take that one, Luke.
Yeah, mate. Let's. I'm just seeing there's 50 comments here, so we'll, like Jake said, we'll try and keep. Yeah, yep.
Sweet. Yeah. All right. So look, the biggest thing is returns, super important as well, but also, like for me, the biggest thing I'm looking at is, hey, is this person in contact with you? Do you know what's happening to your KiwiSaver? Do you know why it's fluctuating? Do you know why it's going up and down? Being with a provider that actually gives you all the context and the answers when you want answers is so important. When you go to buy a house, are you waiting 20 days to get that money out, or are you getting that done in 10 days? All of these small things important. The service you get is super, super important as well.
Cool.
And I've got a couple of questions here just to try and lump a few of them when they're on the same vein. Throwing it to you here, Luke. People were saying, I've just bought a home. What do I do when I'm comparing? Should I be paying down my mortgage or increasing my KiwiSaver contributions? Pros and cons to kind of utilizing both.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, eh? With a lot of these things now, I've started saying to people, and this is not financial advice or just may not even be advice for you, but I say, like, do both. I might figure out how to do both, because if you can become that person, then you're going to figure out how to increase your income to be able to do it. Can you pay your mortgage off faster, and can you continue to contribute to your KiwiSaver? Because if you can, I promise you, you're going to do well in this country. So instead of getting caught of the like either or, one day someone challenged me and said, like, why not do both? And I'm like, okay, and it encouraged me to think bigger and go, okay, like, how would I do that? Appreciate, again, like seasons. Maybe we're not in a season to be able to do that. I think, it's easy to focus on clearing debt in the here and now to feel, the value of that. But, maybe it's worth thinking about, okay, if I was to invest this and then get my employer contribution, that's effectively 100% double up. That's pretty hard to get anywhere else. And then have that compounding over time, it's pretty hard to make a case against it. But again, each to their own, and you've got to work through some of these things. John might have a couple of thoughts on that too.
No, you nailed it, mate. I think we'll keep ticking through them. You ticked off all the important things I saw there as well. Hey, one for you maybe, Jake, one here from Ruler says, when I reach retirement age, can I still earn and add to my KiwiSaver while possibly using these funds? I was hoping that I might be able to work part-time for the first few years until physically can't. And I'm seeing a few comments of similar. So maybe just a quick, hey, what happens to KiwiSaver at 65?
100%. The way I describe it to people is the door is open, but you don't have to step through yet. This is a conversation that we can have and then manage the expectations of. It's really important that you decide how you want to utilize it at this point in time. So you can draw from it, you can still contribute to it, and you can still benefit from those returns. Now, I've got a client, well into their 80s that are still contributing to these funds. And in some space, they've got half of it invested low risk, half invested high risk, because in their mind, they don't need access to it now and want to benefit on the long term. And they said to me, the worst case scenario is if I pass away, my family gets it. And they're thinking long term. So again, it just comes down to what is the goal. And that's where I always just encourage people, have a chat to someone. You can't know all the answers on your own.
I'll read this one from Dion, and it says, even with KiwiSaver at 4%, I'm not even one-time salary, and I've been in it since 2014. Now, that can feel incredibly dejecting, but part of why we wanted to do tonight is because, going back to the top, I believe that we're not educating Kiwi people well enough to actually have a look at some of these numbers and see, okay, am I in the right setting? Should I be speaking to somebody to figure out, okay, what I could be doing? And this is the sort of thing that, John loves sinking his teeth into and going, okay, you feel stuck, but with a few changes, here's what your reality could look like. And that's the value of speaking to an advisor. And someone I think asked earlier, are you independent? I don't know what they mean by that. I'm sponsored by Generate and holding a Generate mug. So you're going to then say no to me. Jake works for Generate. So this is a Generate run workshop. No, we're not effectively independent, maybe the answer. But, John, you, I guess, come at it from a different angle, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, look, the way I look at it is people ask, why are you doing a webinar with people that are aligned to Generate? Because I'm fully independent, but Generate's a great company, and the people like Jake are doing a fantastic job. All I want is people in New Zealand to get a better understanding of financial education. And so that is exactly what Jake's doing. And that's why I'm like 100% to answer that question, these are just good people out there helping other good people try to get the best out of it from my side. So it's a win-win, really.
I just want to answer this one because I've got some personal experience on this. As a young person, positives/negatives on using KiwiSaver, or alternatively managing your investment portfolio, investment property shares, etc. yourself. I was going to speak to the managing your own KiwiSaver because that's something that I did. And I get this question a lot in my DMs from younger people. The question I would ask you back is, if you 10x'd or 20x'd the current value of your KiwiSaver, would you still ask the same question? Because I think when you're young, in your 20s, you have this bravado of, oh, it's only 14 grand. I'm gonna pick one or two stocks and find out how to do that, and I'm gonna send it to the moon, and who cares and whatnot. One day that fund is going to be a lot bigger than that. And I have a hunch that you'd be like, I actually wouldn't be confident managing 140 grand of KiwiSaver, but I might at 14 because it doesn't seem like a big figure. So it may just reshape the way that you look at it. But I played with managing my own KiwiSaver for some time because I was that sort of person, and eventually got to a point where I was like, what am I doing? Why don't I get professionals to do this? And I'll carry on with my life. And I don't want to be logging in, checking it all the time. And also, trying to move it around. I was getting kickback of like, no, you can't invest into that, or we're not accepting trades and stuff. And I was like, what am I doing? This is not what I should be doing.
Yeah, and further on that, Luke, a lot of people, they go, actually, this seems pretty easy. I'm just going to have a crack myself. And I have seen people in the past go away, do something, and then come back. And the reality is they can leverage the experience of our investment team or whoever their KiwiSaver provider is, understand what they're doing, and then maybe you can have a little punt in your own personal time. But when you're talking about a 30, 20, 40, whatever your timeline year plan is, it's quite dangerous to obviously be doing it when you're busy cracking on with life and not aware of the market as much as, say, an investment specialist does.
Best way I can sum it up as well is I'm a A+ average master's degree guy. I don't manage it myself because I'm not in it 24/7. These people are paid to be in it 24/7. And so, yes, I'll come to it with ideas, and I think, oh, I could do this. I'll do that with personal stuff. I want to trust the professionals to look after my money long term. Summing it up, it's that easy for me. I
Oh,
thought one that changes the tune a little bit was a really good question here from Ben. Is there any particular reason why governments aren't talking about the idea that NZ Super might not exist when we get there in, say, 20 years' time? The rest of your question kind of sums up a few of the answers we have, and I think it's changing the tack. But the reason I want to answer it is you nailed it there with the rest of it there, Ben. He says, I assume it's because it's a deeply unpopular idea with the largest voting base. So we kind of talked about it a little bit. The honest truth is it is a hard conversation for any government to talk about. We're not saying it's not going to exist, but at the end of the day, nobody wants to make that decision. We're just saying at some point we can't rely on it being there. So let's make sure we can do everything ourselves as individuals to make sure we're not relying on that anyway. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. Doesn't matter. We're sorted either way.
yeah. And I guess we could be completely wrong. And I think we've had the retirement commissioner before suggest no, there's no way. I think, again, like, I'm a consumer behavior guy. I think it's easier for somebody older to say that the pension's always going to be there, but ask someone in their 20s or their 30s what they think. And I think it becomes, yeah, easier at that age to go, I could see a world where it wasn't there. But yeah, if I was trying to talk to a voting base, I mean, the funny thing is the current voting base would get pissy about it, but they would probably phase it in, and it would actually be then the millennials, etc., that would be impacted by it anyway. So the loudest complainers about it probably won't be too impacted by it when it, or should it finally happen. Again, this is speculation. Hey, lads, you probably be able to answer this one. What is the best model / site for forecasting my possible KiwiSaver balance when I retire? I normally go to Sorted and just plug in my value, how much I contribute, and key in a very, very simple, takes about 2 minutes, I think, if that.
Yeah, I'm a nerd, so I have my own models built up as well. But if I would say one that without talking to me or talking to somebody like Jake, that you just got to go out there and grab, it's going to be something like the sort of one, or honestly, jump onto the individual KiwiSaver providers' websites as well. They're all going to have to use the same standard numbers used by the government on those modeling. So yeah, jump on to Generate, click on Tools and Calculators, have a look through there. You'll be able to see some really good indications. And then if you want a little bit of a higher level, plug in a few different things, talk to the advisors as well. That's where we can make a real big difference and give you that confidence to plan moving forward.
Yeah,
Jake, you got
awesome.
it.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, obviously, I use the Generate platform a lot, but Sorted works as well. There are a lot of tools out there, and it's just important, obviously, all the inputs and outputs that you are understand what they mean. When you impact or add inflation into it, and at what level and things like that, what does that actively look like for you? Just seeing a lot of different people sharing their personal circumstances in the form of questions saying, what should I do? Now, obviously, we would love to address these, and these are the exact circumstances of why John and I have a job, because we want to help you. And so if anyone does have any personal circumstances, because we're not going to be able to answer all of them today, you can head along to generatewealth.co.nz/change or reach out to John and have these conversations so that we can help you understand your circumstances instead of more of a generalized space here today.
Yeah. And you're going to be talking to real people as well, team. I think that's the really important thing. We have that hesitancy in New Zealand to reach out and, we're just going to get put in. You're going to talk to real people. So if you do have those questions, we'd love to be able to help you out.
Claire Matthews, I believe this is who puts together the data at Massey there. I think I've got that right. So
Yeah,
it says,
it's either a coincidence or it's the same.
yeah, who is going to elect a government that says they're going to make major changes to NZ Super? Perfect, exactly. And us
Correct.
older people had the same thoughts when we were younger. I think Claire might have said earlier on too that they've got some new data coming out. The 2025 Retirement Expenditure Guidelines report will be out in the next month. Geez, she's on here contributing as she so often does. Great university, Massey University, one of the best in the country. So yeah, keep an eye out for that new data. But that's where the data comes from that we were talking about earlier when it comes to choices and whatnot there. So right. What else have we got? There is I think just some of these, like you say, there might be individual advice needed, but also if we don't get to all of them, then if there's some clear ones that you definitely wanted answered, then fire an email to Jake or John or the team at Generate, and I'm sure they'll try and get to some of those answers tomorrow via emails or on social content. But need to ensure that we're not going down the rabbit hole too far, or getting into personal financial advice.
Absolutely. Luke, did you want to go through a few more questions or what
Yeah,
would you like to? Yeah, I've got one here that is a very important one for me. It's someone who is in an actively managed fund and looking at the more low fee options. What's the pros and cons? And you've just asked the question that is age old. What is better, passive or active management? It's a conversation worth having in the sense that good managed investments often will outperform. You've got passive, their goal is to perform at a market level, and you've got active, which is the goal to outperform the market and putting the right infrastructure in place through the means of fees and funds to outperform that with talent and all the rest of it. So it's important to remember to do the homework, make sure you check, and there's really great tools out there to compare the results of those different providers, Morningstar report, things like that. So really great question on that space there around active versus passive.
And there's a lot of questions in the chat I see around fees as well. So just to build on to Jake's answer there, look, for me, you do have to understand that there's two conversations within that word, right? There's fees and there's returns. So at the end of the day, always make sure you are comparing the real numbers, the returns after fees as well. That's the number you're caring about at the end of the day, right?
And I've always said to people who said, "Oh, I want to find the cheapest option." I said, "Do you do the same when you go to a builder, a doctor, a dentist, any other industry? What defines quality and cheap is not necessarily the way to go." So it's about finding the value proposition, which is why all KiwiSaver providers are compared on a returns after fees comparison. And Generate, of course, has some really phenomenal ones for the long term, for the great work that they're doing.
Perfect. Marianne's asked probably the most basic question, but possibly the most important question. What are the biggest mistakes people make with KiwiSaver and how can I avoid them? Jake?
Yeah, great question. Great question. Look, that it's a tough one in the sense of there are a lot of mistakes that can be made. And I think the major one is just doing it because someone told you. I walked into a bank the other day and they said, "Oh, what's your KiwiSaver doing?" And of course, that's just part of their sales pitch. And that's across the board. Someone's just saying, "Hey, you should do it because it's there or because it's visible or whatever it may be." The reality is you've got to find out what's important to you. Is it the support you receive? Is it the nature of the responsible investments that your provider might engage in? So it's about finding out what's important to you and then going out and finding a provider that supports that. But I think the most important mistake people are making is they're ignoring it. It's a tomorrow job, kick the can down the road. The reality is the only person you are robbing is your future self. So take action and understand that you have a limited amount of time. My job is to remind everyone that they're getting older. So not a great party trick, I'll admit, but the idea here is it's important that you utilize that time to maximize your chance with it.
Three things. One, I had a mate who was 10 years into KiwiSaver, and that's when he first learned he was in a cash fund the whole time. So
Yeah.
basically, he was getting no investment returns, and it was almost like we all just cracked up laughing because he was just like, "How have I not known this?" And yeah, and secondly, the thinking that it's too late for me, but forgetting that we can live a long time, and there's a lot of success comes later on in life. Yes, we want to get compounding earlier. It's funny how when we get older, we think, oh, we don't have time anymore. But when we're younger, we go, oh, I'm not going to invest because I've got heaps of time. So like both mindsets get us stuck. But I think I had that dangerous mindset in the 20s of kind of, I'll worry about that shit later. I'll make good money. I don't need to worry about. Didn't really understand compounding and like missing a decade of compounding. And then, you see now some people create content in late 20s on social media. And it's like, I started investing at 15 and here's what I've got. And it just triggers people. They're like, what? How can you have that? Your parents must have given you the money. This is BS. Where can you get those returns? And people just lose their minds because someone's basically making content about investing for 14 years at this stage. And some people are just getting into thinking about investing. And here's somebody going, oh, I've been doing it for over a decade and a half, and I've got plenty. So the sooner we can start with anything in life, exercising, investing, compounding, is on our side, and it's so valuable. Everybody takes a shock in their life to then look back and go, I wish I started that sooner, but we don't
I,
need that.
I agree. I always get when I'm out talking face to face with people that, oh, I'll worry about that later on. My answer to that team is if you spend 20 minutes worrying about it today, you're not going to have to worry about it all your retirement. Or, if you do worry about it later on, you'll be worrying for a long, long time. 20 minutes today can save a lot of worry in the future.
There's a question here. What's one smart KiwiSaver strategy most people overlook that could make a meaningful difference to their balance, whether they're saving for a first time or retirement? Now, this is going to be like, oh yeah, cool, privileged answer, man. But I did content ages ago on like try and get your KiwiSaver to 100K. And it's Charlie Munger, it's old. It's basically like that bitch of a 100K snowball. Whatever you do to get that first 100,000, like do it. Because once you have the 100,000, the speed at which it compounds, and you can take the principle, it doesn't, there's a reason he's talking about 100 grand and there's heaps of content about it and it can sound so far away, but like take the first step. It might be 10,000, might be 20, 30, getting to the 50. But I did content in 2024 about getting to 100K. And I was like, okay, that's my goal. I'm just going to, anything extra that I've got, I'm going to just kick a little bit in there and so that I could watch that snowball roll. And, I saw the other day, I was like, wow, that was my goal for 2024. It's now mid 2025 or, back half of it. It's 144K. And now I'm like seeing what Charlie Munger was talking about going, whoa, where did that 44 grand come from? Like how quickly has that happened compared to how long it took me to get to the 100? So again, like just because I'm maybe further down the path than this person asking this question, like take the principle, track it, keep an eye on it each month, and actually think, okay, what am I doing to bump it up? There's no silver bullets. Make sure that you've got your employer contributing those sorts of things and you are getting the government piece. But then it's, understanding your own goals and where you're going to invest. But again, you might want some individual help on that.
And I'll give you one tip on how to get to that 100 like Luke was talking about, which is one tip I give a lot of people is if you work a salary job or a wage job, at some stage you're going to get a pay increase. It's just given. It's going to happen. What I always say to people I'm working with, if you are serious about trying to do that one step, how many times have you got a pay increase and never changed what you do with your KiwiSaver? The way I look at it is if you get a 3% pay rise, if you put 1% extra into your KiwiSaver, you're not actually going to see a decrease in how much you're earning every single week. You're just not going to see the full effects of that pay rise. That is one little tip and trick that not many people ever think about that I think can make a massive difference for your KiwiSaver without you even noticing. One day you'll be at 8-10%, but you wouldn't have noticed. You would have just slowly got there as your pay scale changes across time.
Someone's already said, would like to say a huge thank you for your time this evening and sharing with us. Awesome. We'll stick around for a bit because there are some questions there. Somebody, John, you might want to speak to this. Wait, hang on. Studies show that most active funds underperform the market in the long run. How can you say to look at the returns of a fund? You love digging into the returns, I believe. If past returns aren't indicative of future performance, if an investor can't control returns, they can only control the fees. Do you want to speak to that?
Perfect. It's a great question, and it's something I hear often, which is awesome. So the biggest thing is I would say there's so many studies out there around this. What I will be talking about is with KiwiSaver. If we look at returns after fees on a KiwiSaver basis over the long term, right now the active providers are right there. And when I say right there, actually right above. So the thing is you got to make sure you're always looking at the right content. In this space, KiwiSaver, don't be too worried about looking at just the two numbers individually. For me, when I talk with people, it's always returns after fees and what other things come with that as well. What providers for my clients that are going to be able to, that are wanting to buy a home, who's going to give them the quickest turnaround times? Who's going to be able to get them the opportunity to get that first home as soon as possible? So for me, I'm looking at returns, I'm looking at fees, and I'm looking at everything above that, which makes this whole thing called KiwiSaver to round up and say, hey, and the best part about it is, again, me being a little bit different with being independent, I show you all the options. You will choose. But at the end of the day, I look at the numbers and I crunch it more than most. My KiwiSavers with an active provider as well, because it's got that long-term track record and it's got all the additional features that I think I need to be able to give me the confidence to model looking forward. So great question. But at the end of the day, I'd say happy to get on a call and look at you, show you the numbers as well. Because for me, and I know Jake's the same, all we care about is the data.
Yeah, and I think that's a common misconception as well, as if you compare the average performance of a growth to the average performance of a passive, there can be a lot of mixed numbers because, of course, there are bad performing actives as well. And that's why we want to find providers for you guys that are performing well and truly above that. And the reality is if passive providers always outperformed active, like some of the studies might skew, why would active providers even exist? So the reality is there's enough data there to show you that those that do perform well perform above market averages consistently, and that's obviously where we want to help people understand their power is.
Oh, John loves those Morningstar reports. He's had them up on screen in my office one time, and up like it was a whiteboard pointing at the screen, and we almost had to say, "Hey, take a step back, mate. Come on." He loves it. Hey, there's a few questions in here along the same theme, and I love talking about this one. But so many of us use KiwiSaver saving to fund their first deposit. Is this always the best way, or are we just followers to get on the property ladder? There's quite a few questions about using it. I think what I would point out is that let's be honest, right? Like my view is that we set KiwiSaver up to help people save for their retirement. And then eventually we were like, oh, let's let people get into their first home because we have this love affair with property. Now, I might be wrong, but that's how I view it. But the average age of a first home buyer keeps creeping up. That's then decreasing the time that we have to compound. So what are we going to do when we reset that thing back down to zero or a little bit at 35? We're going to look at it and go, oh, well, KiwiSaver is not really part of my retirement because there's nothing in it and I don't care about it. Or I feel dejected, it's low again. And so, and now we've got 30 years to that time, or maybe 40. But you just have to at least have the education that that's what we've allowed people to do. John, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad we're giving away a blunt umbrella today because my answer is always going to be blunt, and all 3,500 clients I work with know that. So for me, the honest truth is it's going to come back to you as an individual because I'm so upfront with my clients that are getting a little bit of an older age and they're going, John, I really want to buy that first home. I want to use my KiwiSaver. I'm going, okay, but let's just look at the math because you're going to be spending all of this all the way into retirement. They're going to be charging you all this. It doesn't make sense. Where I differ a little bit from Luke is like, I'm really big on like, hey, if that's your goal and we can work to get your goal, we can get that. But do we have a plan in place for once you do that, we're not just going to forget about this KiwiSaver thing and have nothing at retirement and have the old adage of, oh, I've got my house, I'll downsize at retirement, I'll be sweet. For me, it's about how can I supplement both. But I am open with saying to my clients, 100%, let's use it for your first home, but let's make sure we've got a plan in place to help you get back to these numbers. So when I'm talking about people with first home, I'm also talking to them about when we pull it all out, what are we looking like at retirement again? What is our model? Does it all stack up? Does it all make sense? But I used it for mine. Is the best way to put it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like don't use it. I think it's, just understand it. But we always see this in the comments, right? Whenever there's any average figures come up, it's like, well, hey, like, I get DMs every time, like straight away. It's like, does this include people who used it for KiwiSaver? It's like, of course it does, bro. It's an average. Like,
Average, yeah.
oh, but I think we probably, if it'd be amazing to see what would be in KiwiSaver if all of the funds weren't taken out for first homes. But we've got to live somewhere, and it's a part of the retirement puzzle, right? Because as Claire puts the data together, and as we talked about earlier, we do want people to get to 65 and not have an outgoing of a mortgage. So it's got to be a part of it. It's just a shame that housing is so expensive in New Zealand that we then have to rob from our retirement fund to then be able to pay that to then decrease the time that we've got to compound to get back there.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, it's just math, right? And it's exactly what you're saying. It's just math. Does this make sense for you in your situation?
Hey, I forgot to touch on earlier, but Jake, these averages, right? They are dragged down effectively by people who don't contribute, because this is, say like an average is tracking everybody in there, right? So those who don't contribute or have, really low amounts and aren't contributing, they're gonna effectively, pull the averages down because they're not contributing, but they're still calculated in the figures.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the stats from the FMA. So yeah, it very much is including everyone. So there's 3.3 million people in KiwiSaver as at this report. So, there's a lot of people at different stages within that, whether they were signed up, never contributed, and all the rest of it as well. And that's kind of a big part of this puzzle as well, as there are far too many people out there that are ignoring this, not contributing. It's just sitting there as something that isn't working for them. Everything else in life is working against you in a sense, so why not get this working for you as effectively as possible?
Good question here. What is a good way to plant the seed of thinking about KiwiSaver to mates, workmates who may not be in tune with it, and try to direct them towards seeking advice? Just tell them up front, you're not living with me, mate.
Great question as well. At the end of the day, it depends how long you've had your KiwiSaver sorted as well. I know a big one, my clients. So like a lot of my business all comes from word of mouth. And so how a lot of my clients do is they honestly sometimes just turn their KiwiSaver around and say, hey, I've been working with this guy for this long and this is what I do. Have a think about it. Or I'm so upfront with, I should say, pass my number or pass their number on to me and I'll give them a phone call, because it's one conversation in a lunchroom can, if they take action, make such a big difference. So it's just the key there is how do they take action? For me, it's whether you allude them to one of our websites or you just say, hey, here's the number of the guy, give him a chat, give him a call because he'll answer.
Nice. I think there's a few people asking if this is recorded and whether they'll get a copy because they might have turned up a little bit late. I'm sure the team from Generate will send this out. Lads, do you guys know this? I was never able to use the first home buyer grant. I just missed out by a few months before it came into effect. Is there any way I get a chance to use it on the next larger house I would like to buy, even if it would be just the amount I had before my first home purchase?
I
I don't know.
understand the question correctly. Was that the first home start grant they were talking about, which did cease to exist? But if they're talking about the first home access and deposit, using your KiwiSaver can be used once. And if in the environment you didn't use it for your first home, the only way you could do it is through the second chance withdrawal, which is a very complex process, and you have to meet a very strict criteria. And that's definitely something worth chatting to your KiwiSaver provider about, and it is measured Kainga Order are the ones who ascertain whether or not you qualify for that. But it's really important to be aware of your circumstances. And as I say, it's very strict. So it is generally designed for a first home buyer. And there are very few occasions where a second home buyer, if they were in the position of a first home buyer, could potentially explore it if they didn't access it that first time.
Yeah, again, being blunt, but this is how I would answer. If you're a client of mine, Simon, this is how I'd answer it. I'd say, mate, I actually hope you're not in a position to be able to use your KiwiSaver again. And you might go, why? Why are you saying that to me? Because the honest truth, Simon, is if you are in a chance to be able to use it for your next home, it means you didn't make money on the home that you've purchased right now. You're back in the position of a first home buyer, all these kind of things. And I don't want that for you. Unfortunately, you weren't able to use it. The benefit of that is, mate, you're able to just look long term with it and get the most out of your KiwiSaver at retirement and focus on building the house through another means.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. And sorry, I had another question here that came through that was, do you think that the minimum age to access KiwiSaver will increase from 65? And this was a point we were talking on just before we went live. So any of you lads like to comment on that one?
Perfect. I'd love to, because for me, this is just a personal opinion on this. But the way I look at it is, if I feel that KiwiSaver is going to, oh, sorry, Super is going to go from 65 to 67 to 70, and by the time I get there, 75 or older, I genuinely believe KiwiSaver will stay at 65 because it's going to allow people that want to retire at 65 to bridge that gap between 65 and whatever age Super is at that point in time. That's a personal opinion of mine, but that is why KiwiSaver is set up. It's set up to help people have the retirement they need and want. And so if people want that from 65 onwards, then that's the way it's going to be. That's how I look at it. How about you guys?
I think if they change the access date, like we'll probably see some people camping out the front of bloody the beehive again. Like I do think that there's enough people in it now that would be, especially as it snowballs and gets bigger, we're at about 129 billion now, I believe. That's going to compound if they all of a sudden say, you know what, guys, like you can wait for another 3 years to access your money that you've put aside. Geez, I reckon there could be some dark days down there in the '04.
It's a good point. We've probably only just got over the government's going to steal all my money if I put it in KiwiSaver conversations. I don't know if we want to open that can of worms.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an interesting one in that respect as well. And there's all these conversations about people who maybe want to retire before 65 as well. And there are other ways to invest your money too. But this is the important thing, is have your KiwiSaver set up so that at 65 that can kick into gear and take over. And as you say, if things change, we'll be there with picket fences. I don't know if I can say that on behalf of Generate, but I'm sure we'll be there in the sense of representing you when the government tries and make changes that might negatively impact members as well. We're advocates for our members.
I think just one thing that is kind of coming through these comments as well, like all these questions about 65. Like, I heard a story once where the person turned 65 and they just kept it on full aggressive mode, and that's not their sole source of retirement funding, so they're happy to take risk, and basically they slowly spend it down, and it's they might look at it and be like, oh, wow, all of my spending for last month was effectively free. It's a big amount in KiwiSaver because the compounding growth of it has grown beyond what they actually spent in that month. And it's basically, that's their plan. And they're just going to have it full risk and so again, not financial advice or saying to do that, but it just, I think, it opens your mind to, oh, okay, different people at different stages of their life and different amounts are looking at these things differently.
I agree. There's a question in there earlier from Nikki who was saying, like, we were talking about how we can take the risk out as we get into our, late 50s, 60s. And Nikki was going, why would I want to do that, John? Hopefully there's still 20, 30 years for that to grow. 100%. I hope most of my clients and people listening to this are going to be in a position to not have to worry about KiwiSaver at 65. When I'm talking about that, we're kind of talking about it for those that when they get to 65, they're going to need to start drawing down on their KiwiSaver. So let's start protecting some of it. But the key word there is some of it, team, because if you've got a KiwiSaver balance and you don't plan on touching some of it for 10 years, 20 years, we can keep that part growing. If you do need to touch a little bit at 65 or around that age, we can start protecting that small portion of it as well. It's all individualistic, and that's why working with an advisor is so important, because it will be tailored to you, not the law of averages.
And and just on that, like Jake, maybe you want to pick that up, but as you get older, does the KiwiSaver provider start to reach out to the person and say, hey, you might want to think about going risk off? Because there is a question, I'm in a growth fund, as I age, will, switch my fund as I grow older? Or do we need to actively be talking to our advisor?
I saw that question come through and thought, what a fantastic question, because I ask people, the simple answer is yes, there is an option to have it set so that it's on autopilot. But my question back to people is, what is the correlation between where the economy is at and your age? And the truth is, at 65, it could shift you all down to a low risk fund, but we're in a big sink like the GFC. So I look at that and go, it's more important to have manual control, because your life stages, your life cycle, your wherever you're at will change. And so we just want to make sure that KiwiSaver is working for you as effectively as possible. And just going back to what the boys just mentioned, you could be still wanting to invest for another 15, 20 years beyond turning 65. So if you're in a fund that will automatically allocate the risk lower, it would usually put you in quite a conservative position by the time you hit 65. So it's just important to make sure that you're utilizing it for your personal circumstances.
All right, let's just do a few more, because I think we're going to hit an hour and a half pretty quickly. But there is a good question here, and you guys might be able to speak to this in terms of what you've been talking to parents to encourage their kids to think about in this space. But some say cash is king when it comes to kids and money. How would you make KiwiSaver exciting when it comes to selling the idea to kids when it's something they can't physically touch? I'm increasingly hearing more and more stories about people teaching their kids about investing through understanding that you can buy a share in a company, and they might go and shop somewhere, and hey, you could actually put your pocket money into a portion of a share in that to get them thinking about it, and then tracking the balance of that, and how much fun parents are having with that. I think the other thing would be, when they're at the age, run the RBNZ inflation calculator and show them that, keeping your money in cash is pretty brutal in this country, with an average rate of 2.6% of inflation over the last quarter of a century, and how much you're losing your purchasing power. And therefore, there's a saying, you can't save yourself to wealth, or whatever it is. You can't save yourself to a retirement. It's like, what does that mean? Well, it means you need to be thinking about investing, because purely just saving via term deposits and whatnot, I think a lot of baby boomers are now learning, okay, their money may not, yeah, it's great to have the return of capital, but there might not have been the return on capital to beat inflation. But any tips to encourage the kids to be thinking about KiwiSaver?
Yeah, great question. And this is what I do love about the providers that provide apps that are very visible, in the sense that if you've got someone who's 15 and just starting their first job or something like that, you can actually give them access to see exactly what's going on, how it's being invested for you, what that growth actually means. And that can be conversations around the dinner table where you are encouraging them to start thinking about investing, and using Generate's app as an example. You can break it down and see exactly where that money, what company your KiwiSaver is being invested in right now, and that just gives you that transparency around how your money's being invested. And I think that's a really cool tool for young people to go, I recognize that, I know that company, and also see the hard work that they're doing if they've got a part-time job or something like that, and what that's building towards for their future. Just the earlier we start having these conversations, the more we normalize it, the better off we'll be as a nation.
John, don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, but this kind of flows on from that. Why do you think Kiwis are so apathetic about their KiwiSaver and just not engaged in it? From someone who's probably the most passionate person in the country about KiwiSaver, and this place is KiwiSaver, the industry has probably found you, or you've found it, and you've just taken it and run with it and love it, and now helped 3,500 people all over the country. Why do you think? What do you see when people just like, man, I don't care, I'm not talking to that guy?
It's just a lack of education, in all honesty. That's as blunt as I can put it. If we knew this coming out of school, the real effects of compounding returns, how much of a difference it will make to us over a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year period, we'd be all excited. I walk into a room when I go and talk to a presentation, say, let's say a group of tradies a few weeks back, walk in, I can see their heads visibly drop when the KiwiSaver guy walks in to talk about KiwiSaver, because nobody cares about KiwiSaver. It's not sexy, right? But when I talk to them and I show them the facts and the figures, I can genuinely see people sitting up on their seat waiting to be able to come and have a chat with it. So I honestly think it's just a lack of education. But the more people that are educated in this space, the more that care about it. I mean, we've had over 200 people join us here today, which is fantastic. And that shows me that that tide's kind of turning in New Zealand. And we are starting to care about this kind of stuff. And to me, like my favorite question so far has been the one by Michael Higgins about, hey, how do I talk to mates or workmates about this kind of thing? Because I remember on our podcast when we talked a while back, Luke, you said like, what you felt like, financial education was at that point where we were with mental health a few years ago, which was like, let's just talk about it. And that's the honest truth is all three of us want is let's just talk about financial education in New Zealand. If we talk about it, it's going to make a really big difference.
Nice. Yeah, I think this is one of those areas where it's really, it's really easy to complicate. And it's a bit like, if your doctor says, hey, you need to start exercising, you're not like, oh, okay, but how much creatine should I take before I do it? And what do you think the amount of protein I need before I take my first runners? And do you know the right running shoes? And hey, I heard my mate next door said that before I do that, I should make, but that's what we kind of do with finance as well. It's like, hey, just get going, just
Good
keep
stuff.
moving, and we
Yeah.
can learn some of it. And I think the danger with the finance space too is it's a bit like the fitness industry where there's so many different opinions, and so then you kind of can get lost in it all as well. And then there's people that are self-educated and they'll tell you like do it this way, but that's what works for them, but it might not work for you. And then we can get a bit lost as well. So I think it can be a confusing space. And I think at the end of the day too, we're scared, to we work hard to make our money. So then to risk it, is crazy, for some people to think, some people tell me like, absolutely no way. I've dabbled in shares, and, it wasn't for me. After 3 months, we were down $200 and like, never again. I'm like, wow. Okay. But like for not understanding it, but at least they understand their own risk tolerance. But if they had better education about, well, okay, that's, these things go in cycles, it'd be a little bit like, the winter coming and 2 days in, you're like, this is crazy. This isn't for me, this winter thing. And then, yeah, you have to accept that cycles happen and ups and downs come with investing, much like life. Sometimes I compare it to raising a toddler. Not that I've done that, but they tell me that they calm down eventually. But you still got a dollar cost average into them. Hey, we better pick a couple of winners. You boys maybe pick two here, and we're going to need these people's emails. So hopefully they're still online. Someone says, will you be doing any more of these? I've learned so much. Thank you. That's awesome. You should come to our work at Harkin Roofing, where it would be good for the guys to see. So maybe someone can get in touch with Jake or John. Wouldn't it be great if financial literacy was taught in secondary schools? Well, that's slowly happening. I'll tell you what as well, like I go and speak to one high school each year, and I was blown away when I said to them, year 11 boys, like, hands up if you've heard of inflation. What about Bitcoin? What about KiwiSaver? Like so many hands. And that it's easy to look at younger people and think like they don't know anything about this stuff and they're not well equipped. But I think increasingly they're picking up this stuff. And there's even data to suggest that sort of the younger people coming through are a bit more in tune with debit rather than credit and things like that as well. So maybe we're seeing a big shift in that. And that's one of the things that I like to bang on about, that I do like about KiwiSaver, is that it brings brings people closer to education, because once you're in the fund and contributing, then you're starting to learn about it and getting emails and things like that. But do you boys want to pick a couple of winners of the old blunt umbrellas, courtesy of Generate there? The topic of saving for a rainy day, which is the emergency funds, are part of the topic for Money Month this month as part of Sorted. So
yeah, I'm happy to pick my winner. Michelle Zuzi, just thank you very much for your questions. You've obviously been very engaged in it, so I really appreciate that. If you don't mind sending us your email address in the chat there, or the questions, we'll get one sent out to you.
Perfect. And I was going to go with somebody the same. Ruler Travers, I saw two great questions come through at the end and even a thank you note. So that goes a long way. So appreciate that. We'll make sure if we can get your details through as well, that'd be awesome.
outstanding. Michelle's just put her email straight into the Q&A. Good form. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving up your time, boys. It's inspiring listening to you guys. And yeah, thank you. And thank you to everybody that's showing up. It's cool to see people willing to learn. We'll get this replay out. And thanks to Jake and to John and from the team at Generate, who are happy to help me magnify my message to try and get access to, or get education access to 100,000 Kiwis to improve their financial literacy and therefore improve the wealth of the nation. I think we're slowly getting there, boys. What do you reckon?
I'm as happy as I've ever been in this, because I get clients passing on more clients. And honestly, when I first started, people didn't talk about this. So I think we're in a great place, and a lot of it comes from the message you spread and these companies spread. So I'm loving it.
You're doing good work, mate. And Jake?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that seems to be gaining some serious momentum. You know, we do a lot of activities and events out in the public, and more people are coming up saying, "I know what I'm doing. I'm with you guys." You know, we've had conversations, and I just think it's a lot of what you're doing is awesome, Luke. It just really is reaching many people. So can't thank you enough for it.
Cool. I do sometimes worry that I wonder if because the economy's tough, we're in a bit of a season where people are interested in money. And if, if it gets bubbly again, people will kind of go, don't need to worry about any of that stuff anymore. My interest rates have come down. I think I did my KiwiSaver thing 3 years ago. I don't know. I signed up for something, but hopefully not. Hopefully we can keep the snowball of education rolling. Cool. Plenty of thank yous coming through, which is always good to see. Again, thank you to everybody who has shown up tonight and for registering. If there are any topic suggestions, yeah, I'm sure we'd have enough energy to do another one of these at some stage. So if you've got a lot out of it, then yeah, feel free to let us know. If there's anything specific you would like to see covered or different people from within Generate that you would like to hear from, be more than happy to explore putting something together. But we'll let everyone enjoy their night. You go, John.
I was just going to say, and heaps of the questions at the start were about how do we make a difference? How do we take that first step? Honestly, everybody just joining this and taking an hour and a half out of their night to you've done the first step. So that's awesome. And it's great to be part of such a great community.
Yeah,
Good
awesome.
man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all for coming along. And it's just been really nice to share in an environment of like-minded people. So, power to you, and keep talking about these things. Information provides us with a lot of power. So keep it up.
Cool. We'll close it out there and let everyone enjoy their night, and we'll see you on the next one.
Cheers, team.
Thanks, guys.